Now, Britain's most notorious and perhaps most violent prisoner, Charles Bronson, telling a parole board today he's chilled out man. It's his latest bid to win freedom after 49 years behind bars. He became renowned, of course, for violent incidents in prison, the second inmate in UK legal history to have his case heard in public. Now, he's testified he is no longer an angry man. Let's get more now with Emma Kenney, who's a psychologist, joining us. Emma, thanks for your time. I'm just reading the latest evidence that he's given the parole board hearing, saying he now has ways of managing negative feelings. When he's in his cell and he's get a bad letter or something's happened, he can sit in his cell, switch off and go into deep breathing. What do you make of the sort of the change in circumstances, as he would put it?
I guess that his age is a big change in circumstance with respect. So research shows that the older people become, the less of a threat they tend to be when we're looking at the kind of crimes he's been involved in. I think he's at a disadvantage. His character and personality come across to some degree quite disagreeable and charming at the same time. So it's kind of this bizarre spectrum. And the problem with that is it can make people feel, particularly on a parole board, relatively insecure about making decisions over his freedom. Also, he has a massive disadvantage that he's been locked up for 23 out of 24 hours a day. And the problem is, you've got to look at that being a systemic issue. That's not his issue. That's the way he's been managed in the prison situation. So to some degree, they hold a lot of this against him and make him the main issue, as opposed to the way he's been managed. I personally am quite resistant usually to look at people and think, well, would I free them or otherwise? I like to compile the information. I'm researching him at the moment, actually. And I do actually think the likelihood is it would be helpful for him to be given a shot at freedom under very strong restrictions. I do. I think that when I think about Colin Pitchfork, double child murderer, who was released into our society, I have a lot more concerns about individuals like him. He's back in prison now, as we know. But the point is, do I think that this man poses a threat? Possibly. Do I think in the weight of his experience in the system, and I think the failures of that system, therefore, to bring him to a position where he's still not apparently rehabilitated, that would be a real statement that would suggest our system is horrifically failing. I truly think that with the right help, he could probably have a hope for a reasonable freedom with supervision.
Right. I mean, the reason that perhaps he's locked up for 23 hours a day is he's taken hostages on 9 different occasions while in prison and committed acts of violence on staff, even an art teacher who he took hostage. And I'm just looking at the quote that he's told the parole board, "There's nothing better than wrapping a governor up like a Christmas turkey." Is that really someone of sound mind that you'd want to release into the public arena?
Yeah. I don't deny whatsoever that, firstly, his personality, as I said, there's no objectionability about it. Really is. It makes you go on the back foot. He doesn't pretend. And the problem is, if you're not willing to pretend and say what the parole board want to hear, at times that works against you. But ironically, I'd rather have somebody who doesn't pretend in those circumstances. Has he done horrible things? Absolutely. Has he been violent? Yes, he has. Is that deserving of, shall we say, the full life tariff that Joanna Dennehy currently is serving, or Rose West? No, I don't think it is. And I think our system has to believe in restorative justice, which is something that they could involve him in if he's on the outside, getting involved in projects, etc. And certainly rehabilitation is something that we should believe is possible. Right. He's at an age where I think that the likelihood that he's got a potential for serious violence is reduced. Do I think that that comes without problems and potentials? No. Do I think he would need absolute supervision at a point that is probably stricter than the obvious regime of the normal prisoners who are released? Yes, I do. So it's not as if I'm saying flippantly we should release this guy. I'm saying I think his personality, not just his actions, are what causes him issues in release.